You know, right now, whether it's in this country, meaning America, or in other Western nations across the world, the idea of being trans is being normalized. It's on social media, it's on mainstream media, it's in movies, it's in documentaries, it's in TV shows, it's seemingly everywhere, including advertisements. However, there's an untold side to the story, and the untold side involves how children within the education system, the medical system, and many other systems are getting pipelined into this trans ideology, as well as the other side, which is people who transitioned and are now in the process of transitioning back because they suffered so much regret. However, even though these stories are getting ignored and or marginalized, well, we here at the Epoch Times, we decided to give them center stage. Our team here produced an unbelievably awesome documentary called Gender Transformation, The Untold Realities. And in it, it exposes exactly what's happening behind the scenes. It's an amazing documentary that is a real tearjerker. I will be surprised if you watch it and you don't shed tears, at least in the middle or definitely at the end. And today, I am incredibly honored to be joined by the director and producer of this documentary, Mr. Tobias Elfhoga. Tobias, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
For sure. So let's start with the most, in my opinion, obvious question. Like I can imagine, let's say, the big pharma companies, the big pharmaceutical companies, the hospitals, and maybe some of the other non-hospital clinics, they obviously have a profit motive, right? So, you know, somebody who is transitioning, they're going to be needing surgeries repeatedly, they're going to need drugs for a long period of time, follow-up checks, it's all covered by insurance, at least for most states throughout the US. So it's like, okay, obvious profit motive. But what about the education system and the government and the media? Do they have a profit motive too? Like, why are they pushing it so systematically throughout all of society? Did you figure that out?
We had a really great expert talking about this point, and she's been, she's been within the schools, a therapist, and also a social worker, and she's been also involved with the LGBTQ organizations at schools. She was actually involved in a secret club, LGBTQ club, that were actually like taking care of children who came and were, questioning their gender identity or having other problems. And she said, the main motive that she saw is that, people wanted to be good. I mean, we all want to be good citizens. We want to do what's good, what's right. And she saw that, okay, this is being used. So we think we're doing something good for the children, taking care of them. But when you see what's actually happening, it's not good in the long run. So she actually turned around a little bit, and now she is having this website, The Truthful Therapist. And she's helping people to see through this, because it's really hard if you don't have the facts, if you don't have the research behind. Many research investigations that are made here in the US are actually quite short term, and they are not like, it's not verified science. It's not made in a true scientific manner, like following up, making it like a long-term studies. Actually, the long-term studies are actually found in Sweden. And when you look at those, you see a completely different picture of it. So, because Sweden have it, this is a policy by the state. You have to follow up on all the medical records. Mm-hmm. So that's why we can have this. But we see, when you see that, it's actually very damaging to children. And actually, it's a higher risk that they commit suicide if they start to transition and change the gender than if not. So, and that's not mentioned in the US.
So the longer term studies in Sweden, they show that with a medical intervention over a long period of time, it's actually worse generally. That's what they show?
Yeah. Wow. That there's like, you don't avoid, because that's a main talking point that they have here in the US, that if you don't transition right away as a child, you will probably commit suicide. So that's the thing we always heard, that okay, they even say that right out to the parents. Would you rather have a dead daughter than a living son? That's like reoccurring, and it's like, wow, of course I want to have a living son. Then there's no choice, and that's like the same. Going back to what you asked, what's happening in the schools. So if you go by that, then you think you're actually saving lives, and of course you want to save lives. So I think that's the propaganda that's being taught, that's so damaging. That's you know, then yeah, you get people to follow that, and you get people to you use their good sides, you know, their good consciousness, but in a bad way.
Yeah. So, you know, you said that one of the talking points, and it's mentioned in the film too, you know, would you rather have a dead daughter or a living son, right?
Yeah.
One of the other talking points, and it's also mentioned in the film, is the idea that you can just kind of put a pause on puberty. Just take these puberty blockers, no problem. If you change your mind, which you probably won't, you can just restart puberty later. In the film, well, you have a couple of examples, but can you sort of lay it out for the people watching? Is that actually accurate?
So it's not accurate at all. That's my experience, my learning when I interviewed all these experts. It's so many different side effects. I mentioned the bone density, but you know, of course, if you pause puberty, it's such, you know, think of the body. You know, that's a period of time when the body is developing as at most. You know, everything. So everything get affected, and we interviewed a lot of detransitioners, you know, that went on puberty blockers. So they have problems with their genitals. They have problems peeing. There's, you know, so it's damaging your most, you know, important system for, you know, future generations to be able to have a, you know, a son or a daughter in the future. So that's what's so sad about this. When I interview these people who are regretting the decision that they made when they were like 12 or 13, and then, you know, you regret it, but what can you do? It's too late. And also, you know, most probably you're going to be a lifetime patient. So you have to always go and check and see, because you have damaged your body so much. So it's irreversible.
All right, let's pause here for a super quick moment so that I can introduce you the sponsor of today's episode by showing you this little piece of money. Or rather, I should say that this is fake money being printed into oblivion by those geniuses over in Washington, D.C. And so before they completely obliterate your life savings, what I recommend you do is to convert that fake money into real money, which is physical gold and silver. And the best company to use is the sponsor of today's episode, American Hartford Gold, who also happens to be my own personal gold and silver bullion dealer. Now, American Hartford Gold is one of the best companies in the game. Besides myself, they have thousands of other 5-star ratings across the country. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They ship quickly, directly to your doorstep. Their product listings are awesome. They're stacked with great options of gold and silver bullion and coins. And best of all, they have amazing customer service. When you pick up the phone and call them, you feel good because not only do they have friendly staff, but they're a patriotic company that actually sponsors a program like ours, so you feel good knowing you support a company that supports the truth getting out into the wider American audience. And so calling them up is a no-brainer. But best of all, if you tell them that Roman sent you, they will throw in up to $5,000 worth of free silver with your first purchase. So giving them a call is a real no-brainer. So hit them up. It's 866-242-2352. That's 866-242-2352, or you can simply text the word Roman, R-O-M-A-N, Roman, to 65532. Roman to 65532. Of course, all their details will be down in the description box below. And now, let's head on back to the studio. So when you were in the process of making the film, you were speaking to a lot of the detransitioners, the people who regretted it and then tried to change back, and you spoke to a lot of the family members. What was maybe the most heartbreaking or heart-wrenching story that you came across?
Yeah, definitely Abigail Martinez. So that was like maybe the third interview we had. And we didn't expect what was going to happen because, you know, the whole team was almost, you know, crying, so, you know, during the interview. Even the cameraman, he's like, you know, this, not stiff, but you know, very manly guy who never cries. And even the cameraman, he was like crying this moment. And then afterwards we discussed this, and then we knew that, okay, this is really going to be our main interview because it's so powerful. It's so, you know, it's so emotional. And that's why we decided also to make this into a part drama to you know, really get, because it's so clear. You see the emotions, you see the mechanisms leading up to something really terrible, you know, and how the journey goes there, you know, all these steps. It was so clear in so many ways, and also it was so tragic. So it's something that when you hear it, you don't forget it. It's like it sticks with you, and like, okay, so then I knew also we have to do something to, you know, get this story out.
You know what? Now that as you were explaining it, I suddenly had this realization that your documentary is so powerful because normally these types of documentaries are labeled as transphobic, just right away, just like, oh, that's it, just put that label on there. But because you're interviewing the actual people who themselves were trans, right? And they said, hey, listen, this is not what it's cracked out to be. It's like, well, they're not transphobic. They themselves are trans, or at least they were, right? So it's like, it's an amazing look. It really is like, your documentary is a look behind the curtain. That's what I felt when I was watching it. It's like, this is that's what it's called, right? The untold realities, right? That it's true. That's exactly what it is. Was there anything, as you were making this documentary, was there anything you learned that really surprised you?
A lot of this was kind of new to me. Like I said in the beginning, I was, even, not sure if I would, do this subject. But the more I learned about it, the more I felt like this is such an important issue. This is, happening not only in the US, it's happening all over the world. And there's people profiting on our children. There's hardly, of course there's things that are worse, but I feel it's so bad, how can you profit on making our children becoming, sterile, and hurting their bodies, becoming lifelong patients? How can anything be worse than that? Like going after the children with this and pushing it so hard. I felt it's so unfair to the children. I felt like you said also, there's been so much just one-sided in many of the medias. If you look at some big platforms, streaming platforms, I looked at those documentaries that they all paint a picture of like I said, oh, this is the solution to your problem. And they are following people and they're not questioning anything. They're just following some people who do their transition and okay, so everything becomes so much happier after. And that's the picture you get a lot in the media. And that's, like you said, that's why we need also to see the other side of all these medical complications.
One of the shocking things that I found when I was talking to some of the people in the documentary ahead of the panel discussion, but also when I was watching it, is that you can talk about these problems. If let's say your son comes to you and they say, well, I'm thinking of transitioning, you can tell him like, hey, there's 27 problems that you can come across by doing this process. A lot of people regret it. Maybe we should maybe you should just try something else. Maybe you're just feeling depressed, etc. You can talk to your son about it one-to-one. But a doctor, at least in certain states, can't, right? Because that's an aspect of the conversion therapy law. Like, you're not allowed to actually try to talk someone out of it, not even talk them out of it. Sometimes just asking him about the underlying issues that's causing him or her to try to go trans, even just discussing those issues, that's a form of conversion therapy and therefore illegal, right?
Yeah.
Some of the people you spoke to said that. So it's like the highest authority in people's lives, usually, in the medical field at least, the doctor, they're not allowed to tell them what you're able to tell me. Isn't that shocking?
That was actually one of the aspects that was so shocking, that not only the doctors, but the therapists, they can lose their license. If the therapist is not immediately affirming your new identity, they can lose their license. And, and in the schools, if the teacher is not affirming the new identity, they can, get a lot of backfire from that. So yeah, the whole system is like that, right? You have to affirm, and even it's even on the highest level of society, they even the president of the United States went out and you have to affirm your children. So it's like on all levels of society, it's so much pushed. You have to affirm, and if you don't, you'll get in trouble. And that, for me, that should be really become so obvious that there's something fishy about it. If you can't question, if you can't do anything, you just have to approve. That's, for me, is like a dictatorship. It's like the total control. It's like totalitarian society. You have to just do this, or else you'll get in trouble. Everyone, the doctors, the therapists, the teachers, and that's scary. That was the really scary part, because I've seen doing documentaries. I've seen how the system works in China, and the system in North Korea or whatever. Then you understand it's totalitarian. It's like, okay, you have to follow your authorities. But having that here, in such a tragic way that you lose your custody of your child, and the state will take care of it. That for me was shocking. Yeah.
Tobias, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And lastly, if you'd like to watch the documentary for yourself, I would highly recommend it. It is awesome. The link will be down there in the description box below. It'll be premiering on June 19th. And if you want to check it out, again, that link will be down there. Just click on it and you can head on over. And I would recommend watching it with your whole family, because the information it contains, at least in my opinion, is vitally important to the future of this country. So check it out, watch it with your family, maybe even send it to your friends, send it to your enemies, send it to your colleagues, your neighbors, anyone you know, because whether they have kids, grandkids, whether they know someone who has kids, they should know what's going on behind the scenes. So again, that link will be down there in the description box below. Hope you check it out. And then until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed, and most importantly, stay free.